From 1840 to 1890, minstrel shows were the most popular form of entertainment in America. The makeup consisted of a burnt cork on a layer of cocoa butter or black grease paint. First, red lips were painted around their mouths like those of today's circus clowns. Later, lips were usually painted white or left unpainted. Costumes were usually gaudy combinations of formal wear, swallowtail coats, striped trousers, and top hats, imitating black music and dance and speaking in a plantation dialect. Jokes, songs, dances, and skits that were based on the ugliest stereotypes of African American slaves. This is a modern interpretation on minstrel skits. Instead of jokes on the time period, we are going to be mocking the stereotypical frat guy as a modern twist. Costumes including a backwards hat and polo shirt, and setting is the front porch of a frat house.
The first part of the minstrelsy is the walk-around. A staple of the walk-around is the cakewalk, where performers marched in circles. When the end of the performance was nearing, the performers would form a semicircle, and the time-honored phrase was said. This phrase is, "Gentlemen, be seated. We will commence with overture."
Part 2, called the Olio, was the variety section. It included singers, dancers, comedians, and other theatrical acts. We will be focusing on the comedy portion. First, we have an example of an original joke, followed by a few of our own.
Say, Tambo, I heard you had trouble with your wife last week. What was the difficulty you had with your spouse?
I didn't have no souse, I was sober.
I said spouse, not souse. What was the nature of your trouble with your wife?
Well, I'll tell you. You see, when my wife and I got married, we bought a cow in partnership. She paid for one half the cow and I paid for the other.
That seems fair enough.
That's what I thought till we got married.
Well, what happened after you got married?
One day I went to milk the cow, and my wife saw me, and she said, "No, that's my half." And she told me hers was the front.
Well, that sure was a good joke on you. Yours was the front half.
Yeah, was it? Ha ha ha.
Well, what did you do about it?
What did I do about it? Why, I stopped feeding my half of the darn cow and it died. Ha ha ha. How many frat boys does it take to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know, how many?
11. 1 to hold the light bulb, and 10 to drink Red Bull until the room spins.
Oh!
My education's important.
But my fraternity's importanter.
Yay!
Never trust the guy if you can't see his shoes.
Why not?
Because his Sperry's might be off-limit.
Oh, true.
The third part is a one-act play that typically mocks the carefree life on the plantation. Like so, we will be displaying the carefree frat life.
Christie's Minstrel was a very well-known Blackface group formed by ballad singer Edwin Pierce Christie in 1843, which is where the group got its name. This group that started in New York influenced minstrel shows because it was the first to make the three-part act popular.
The group specialized in performing the work of Stephen Foster, who wrote their very famous and popular song, Old Folks at Home. The group continued performing under the name Christie's Minstrel for a short time after Christie's retirement until he had it put to a stop. J.W. Rayner and Earl Pierce restarted Christie's Minstrel in London, England in 1857. This group was so successful that Christie's Minstrel became a term used for any minstrel group, and many more clans of Christie's Minstrels formed after that.
Thomas Dartmouth Rice, also known as Thomas Dartmouth Daddy Rice, was a white entertainer. He was considered the father of American minstrelsy. He popularized the Jim Crow character in his minstrel shows. He used African American vernacular speech, song, and dance to become one of the most popular minstrel Showtime entertainers. Performed in more than 100 plays and created plays of his own, he was born in New York City, and he was a traveling actor in the 1820s. He was over 6 feet tall and observed many African Americans. He combined his observations, his humor, and exaggeration to develop his first black stage character, known as Jim Crow. He wore tattered clothing and a burnt cork for his black face. His dance derived from Irish and African American styles.
Dan Emmett was born in 1815 and died in 1904. He was the founder of the first troupe of Blackface minstrel tradition. His first troupe was the first one to do a full show rather than just an act. His most famous song, called Dixie, was composed while he was a member of Bryan's Minstrels. It was performed first in New York City, and it became a huge hit in the South and is now known as one of the anthems for the South. He joined the Army at 17 and became an expert on the fife and a drummer. He published a guide for both of those in 1862. According to PBS, it was Dan Emmett's group performances that made minstrel shows a full-scale craze.
George Washington Dixon was born in around 1808 and died in 1861 in New Orleans. He started out at age 15 working in a circus as a comic singer. He then began playing the role of a Negro minstrel. This was the first time anyone had ever done this in New York City. He was accompanied by a banjo. He then traveled to large cities to sing his songs. Two of his most famous songs were The Coal Black Rose and Zip Coon. George Washington Dixon was termed the pioneer of Negro minstrelsy. He was arrested and jailed in Boston due to a forged note in order to receive payment early, and then he was arrested a second time for forging another note. In 1842, new occupations included animal magnetism and spiritualism. He also began walking several hours in order to earn prizes. He walked a total of 60 hours, and at one point he walked 30 miles in 5 hours and 35 minutes. He retired in New Orleans, where he died of tuberculosis.